I should have covered myself, but I didn't. That thought didn't arrive until it was already too late, until the silence in the room shifted, until the air felt heavier, charged in a way I couldn't undo. I remember the exact second I realized he could see me. Not fully, not clearly, but enough. Enough to change everything. It was supposed to be harmless. A quiet evening, a door left ajar. The comfort of being somewhere I believed was safe. I told myself there was nothing wrong with relaxing the way I always did when I thought no one was watching. Nothing wrong with letting my shoulders drop, with breathing out after a long day, with forgetting the world for a moment. And then I felt it. Not a sound. Not a touch. Just that unmistakable awareness like skin knows before the mind does. The fine hairs along my arms lifted. My breath caught halfway in. I didn't turn right away because part of me already knew what I'd find if I did. When I finally looked up, his eyes were there. Not wide. Not shocked. Just fixed on me, dark and unreadable. Like he'd walked in on a secret he hadn't known he was looking for. The kind of look that doesn't rush, doesn't apologize. The kind that lingers. I should have moved. I should have pulled away, covered myself, laughed it off. Anything to break the moment. Instead, I stayed exactly where I was. My heart started beating so loudly I was sure he could hear it. The room felt smaller, like the walls were leaning in to listen. Neither of us spoke. There was a question hanging between us, unasked. A line I hadn't crossed yet, but I was standing close enough to feel its heat. I told myself I was still in control. That this was just an accident. That accidents don't have consequences if you don't let them. But his gaze didn't waver. And somewhere deep in my chest something answered it. That was the moment I knew. This wasn't going to stay innocent. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his expression again. Not hunger exactly, not yet, but recognition. Like he'd suddenly noticed something about me that had always been there. And now he couldn't unsee it. The worst part wasn't that he'd seen me. It was that I hadn't stopped him. The next morning I tried to act normal. Overcompensated, really. I spoke too fast, laughed too lightly, kept my hands busy so I wouldn't think about how they'd felt just resting at my sides the night before. I told myself that if I didn't acknowledge it, neither would he. That illusion lasted all of 5 minutes. He walked into the kitchen while I was pouring coffee. Our eyes met, and the air changed instantly. Like someone had turned down the volume on the world. He didn't smile. Didn't look away either. Just gave me a quiet, knowing nod, as if we were sharing something unspoken already. "Morning," he said. My name sounded different in his voice. Slower. Waited. I nodded back, suddenly very aware of the thin fabric against my skin, of how awake my body felt despite the lack of sleep. I hated myself for noticing, for remembering the way his gaze had lingered, not where it shouldn't, but where it wanted to. We'd known each other a long time. Long enough that he felt safe. Familiar. Harmless. That's what I'd told myself back when lines still felt solid and unmovable. Back when I didn't think a single look could tilt the ground under my feet. But something had shifted. As the day went on, we kept crossing paths. In the hallway. By the window. Close enough that I could feel his presence before I saw him. Every time there was that same pause, just half a second too long. A breath held. A glance that said I remember. And I remembered too. I remembered how exposed I'd felt, and how alive. How my instinct hadn't been to hide, but to stay. To let the moment stretch until it meant something neither of us could name yet. By the afternoon, guilt started creeping in. Soft at first. Then sharper. I reminded myself of everything I stood to lose. Of the promises I'd made. Of the version of myself I believed I was. But guilt doesn't erase desire. It only makes it heavier. And by the time the sun started to sink, I knew I was standing on the edge of something dangerous. Something that had started the moment I chose not to cover myself. By evening, the house felt different. Quieter. Not because there was less noise, but because everything that mattered was happening underneath it. I found myself listening for him without meaning to. The sound of his steps. A door opening. The faint shift of air when he entered a room. Every time I sensed him nearby, my body reacted before my thoughts could catch up. A tightening low in my stomach. A warmth spreading where there shouldn't have been any reason for it. I hated that I was aware of myself around him. Of how I stood. How I moved. How my breathing changed when he was close enough to notice. I caught my reflection in the mirror once and barely recognized the woman looking back at me. Eyes a little too bright, lips parted like I was waiting for something. Or someone. We ended up alone in the living room without planning it. Just coincidence, I told myself. Just two people existing in the same space. But the distance between us felt deliberate. Me on one end of the couch. Him on the other. A careful gap, heavy with everything we weren't saying. He spoke first. Something ordinary. Forgettable. I don't even remember what it was, only the way his voice sounded lower than usual. The way it wrapped around the room and settled against my skin. I answered then stopped. Because he was looking at me again. Not openly this time, not like the night before. This was slower. Studied. Like he was memorizing the way I reacted when I realized I had his attention. I crossed my legs. Immediately regretted it. The movement drew his eyes down just for a second. Long enough for my breath to hitch. Long enough for the silence to thicken until it felt almost intimate. "You okay?" he asked. I nodded too quickly. "Yeah, just tired." It was a lie and we both knew it. He leaned forward slightly, resting his elbows on his knees. That small change closed the space between us more than if he'd actually moved closer. I could smell him then, clean, familiar. Unsettling in how much it affected me. I should have stood up. Should have given us both an excuse to breathe again. Instead I stayed. Let my fingers curl into the fabric beneath me. Let my body stay open, angled toward him without meaning to. Our eyes locked. Something passed between us then, not a decision, not yet. More like recognition. An understanding that this pull wasn't imaginary. That the tension had a shape now. A presence neither of us could deny. My heart was racing. Guilt pressing in from one side, desire from the other. I felt stretched between them, trembling quietly. Afraid of what would happen if either of us moved. Because deep down I knew. If he reached for me, even just a little, I wasn't sure I'd pull away. He didn't reach for me. That almost made it worse. Instead, he leaned back slightly, like he was giving me room, like he was being careful. The restraint in that small movement sent a slow, aching pulse through me. Told me he felt it too. That he was choosing not to cross the line yet. The silence stretched. I could hear my own heartbeat, steady but loud, thudding in my ears. I wondered if he could see it in me. The way my chest rose a little faster, the way my hands kept fidgeting like they were looking for somewhere to land. "I should probably head out," he said. The words landed between us, fragile. An exit. A chance to end this before it became something else. I nodded. Again too quickly. "Yeah, probably." Neither of us moved. He stood first. Slowly. The room shifted with him. The air redistributing like it was adjusting to his absence from the couch. When he was upright, he hesitated. Just long enough for hope to flare, sharp and reckless. As he passed in front of me, close enough that his knee brushed mine, my breath caught. It was nothing. Barely a touch. But my body reacted like it was a signal. Heat bloomed instantly, uninvited, undeniable. He froze. For one suspended second, we were both still. His leg against mine, my gaze lifted. His breath suddenly uneven. I could feel the tension in him, taut and vibrating, like a wire pulled too tight. He started then stopped. I looked up at him fully then. Really looked. His jaw was set, eyes darker than I'd ever seen them. Fixed on my face like he was searching for something. Permission. Resistance. A reason to walk away. I should have given him one. Instead, I whispered his name. It came out softer than I intended. Barely there. But it landed hard. I saw it in his expression, the way control slipped just a fraction. The way his hand curled at his side, like it was fighting an instinct. "You don't make this easy," he said quietly. There was no accusation in his voice. Just truth. My pulse thundered. "Neither do you." The admission felt dangerous the second it left my mouth. Honest in a way I hadn't planned to be. My skin felt too warm, too sensitive, like every nerve was awake and waiting. He took a step back. Then another. Relief and disappointment crashed into each other inside me. But as he reached the doorway, he paused again. Looked over his shoulder. Our eyes met one more time, longer now, unguarded. And in that look I knew this wasn't over. It was only waiting. He didn't leave that night. At least, not the way he was supposed to. I heard the front door open, then close, then nothing. No footsteps fading away. No engine starting. Just the quiet hum of the house settling back into itself, like it was holding its breath along with me. I stood there longer than I should have, staring at the doorway he'd disappeared through, my thoughts tangled and restless. I told myself this was the moment to reset, to breathe, to remind myself who I was before a look had unraveled me. Then my phone buzzed. One message. No explanation. I'm still outside. My chest tightened. I didn't answer right away. I couldn't. My fingers hovered over the screen, trembling slightly, while my heart argued with everything I believed I should do. You should let him go. You should lock the door. You should cover yourself emotionally this time. Instead I typed, why? The response came instantly. Because I can't stop thinking about you. I closed my eyes. That was all it took. The careful balance I'd been maintaining tipped quietly, completely. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. I just walked toward the door, every step feeling deliberate and unreal, like I was moving through a dream I wouldn't remember clearly in the morning. When I opened it, he was standing there, close enough that I could feel the warmth of him even in the cool night air. The porch light caught his face at an angle that made him look both familiar and new, like I was seeing him without the safety of distance for the first time. Neither of us spoke. The silence between us wasn't awkward now. It was thick, heavy with everything we'd been holding back. His eyes dropped briefly, then lifted again, slower this time, tracing me in a way that made my breath stutter. I tried to leave, he said quietly. I know, I whispered. I shouldn't be here. I stepped aside. That was my answer. As he crossed the threshold, the space between us disappeared. Not with a rush, but with intention. Close enough that I could feel his breath when he exhaled. Close enough that my body reacted before my mind could catch up. His hand lifted, then stopped, hovering, asking without words. I nodded once. That was when I realized something that made my chest ache. I wasn't just afraid of what might happen. I was afraid of how badly I wanted it to. The door closed behind him with a soft, final sound that echoed louder than it should have. We stood there, inches apart, the quiet between us buzzing like something alive. His hand was still raised, hovering near my arm, close enough that I could feel the warmth radiating from him. That closeness made my skin prickle, every nerve suddenly alert, like my body had been waiting for this moment to arrive. You don't have to do this, he said, barely louder than a breath. The words felt like a test, an offering of control I wasn't sure I deserved. I know, I replied, and still I didn't move away. His fingers finally brushed my arm. Not a grasp, not a pull, just a light, tentative touch, like he was checking whether I'd disappear if he pressed too hard. The contact sent a slow shiver through me, the kind that starts deep and spreads outward until it reaches places you try not to think about. I closed my eyes. That was all the permission he needed. His hand slid a little higher, resting there, steady and sure now. I could feel the tension in him, the restraint humming just beneath the surface. When I opened my eyes again, he was watching my face, searching it for hesitation. There wasn't any left. I leaned in first. Not a rush. Not desperation. Just a quiet closing of distance, like gravity finally doing what it had been threatening to do all along. Our foreheads touched. Our breaths mingled, uneven and warm. I felt his inhale when he realized how close we were, how easy it would be to tilt just a little more. This changes things, he murmured. I know, I said again, my voice unsteady now. His hand slid from my arm to my waist, firm but careful, anchoring me there. The contact sent a pulse through me that I couldn't hide. My fingers curled into his shirt, not pulling him closer, just holding on like I needed something solid to keep me upright. When our lips finally met, it was soft, almost hesitant, a question more than a statement. But the answer came quickly. The kiss deepened, unhurried, filled with all the tension we'd been carrying for days. I felt it in the way his grip tightened slightly, in the way my body leaned into his without asking permission from my conscience. For one suspended moment there was no guilt, no future, no consequences, just the quiet, overwhelming truth of how right it felt to stop resisting. I don't remember who moved first after that kiss, only that suddenly we were closer, Impossibly so, like the space between us had never existed at all. His hand stayed at my waist, grounding steady. Mine slid up to his shoulder, then paused there, fingers splayed as if I was afraid of how natural it felt. The kiss softened, slowed, turning into something almost reverent. Not urgency, intention. Like we both understood this wasn't about losing control but choosing to let go. I pulled back just enough to look at him. His eyes searched my face again, but this time there was no question in them. Just intensity. Heat. A quiet kind of wonder that made my chest ache. "This is dangerous," I whispered. He nodded once. "I know." Neither of us stepped away. Instead, his forehead rested against mine, and for a moment we just breathed together. I felt the rise and fall of his chest, the way my body responded instinctively, leaning into that rhythm, matching it without thinking. My skin felt too sensitive, like even the air between us was enough to make me shiver. His thumb traced a slow, absent path at my side, not searching, not demanding. Just there. Present. Every small movement felt amplified, charged with meaning. I was acutely aware of myself in that moment. The way my pulse fluttered, the way my breath caught whenever his touch lingered. Guilt finally found its way back in, sharp and sudden. Images flashed through my mind. Promises, expectations, the life I was supposed to be living. My body hesitated, tension rippling through me. He felt it immediately. "Hey," he murmured, pulling back just enough to meet my eyes. "We can stop." The sincerity in his voice almost undid me. I shook my head slowly. "I don't want to." Admitting it out loud felt like stepping off a ledge. Terrifying. Exhilarating. Honest in a way I hadn't been with myself in a long time. His exhale was shaky, like he'd been holding it in. He leaned in again, pressing a gentle kiss just below my ear. The warmth of his breath sending a wave through me that made my knees weaken. I closed my eyes, surrendering to the sensation, to the moment. Somewhere in the back of my mind, I knew there would be consequences. That this would change how I saw myself. How I remembered this night. But right then, all I could feel was the truth of being wanted, and wanting back just as fiercely. It didn't go further that night. That's the part people expect to hear differently, and sometimes I still question it myself. But what happened between us didn't need more to become real. The closeness, the shared breath, the quiet way we held each other like the moment might slip away if we didn't. It was enough to mark me. We stayed like that for a long time. Not moving. Not speaking. Just existing in the truth we'd uncovered. Eventually he pulled back. Slowly. Carefully. Like he was afraid of hurting me if he moved too fast. His hands lingered for a second longer than necessary, memorizing, letting go at the same time. "This can't happen again," he said, and this time his voice carried something heavier. Regret, maybe. Or fear. I nodded, because I knew he was right. He left shortly after. No dramatic goodbye. No promises. Just a final look that said I'll remember this, and then the door closed behind him for real. I stood there long after he was gone, the house quiet again but different. I felt exposed in a way I hadn't before, not physically but emotionally. Like I'd stepped into a light I couldn't step back out of. That night taught me something uncomfortable about myself. That sometimes the most dangerous moments aren't the ones where everything happens, but the ones where you realize how easily it could have, and how much of you was ready when it almost did.